So I shall say welcome to you all and thank you all for your support. And so this talk is recorded. If you do not wish to appear in the recording, please switch off your camera now. The picture that you have seen of Naz and Matt together on the invitation, I'm going to share it. Where is it? I forgot. I don't see, but you've seen that on, oh no, there it is. Where is that invitation? There we go, that's a picture. Can you see that picture?
No.
Oh, sorry. Then I'll have to actually do that again. There we go. So as I was saying, now you can see it, I'm sure.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So that picture actually reminds me of them together, as I remember them with this complicity and love for each other. I met this lovely young couple, Matt Mahmood-Ogston and Dr. Salim Mahmood, at another networking event that I organized before I started GPN. It was called Circa, and we met at the St. Stephen's Club on the 5th of February 2010. Both Circa and St. Stephen's Club do not exist anymore, or not in the same guise. Matthew was a co-founder, chief optimizer, and CEO of Follow Things and Page Do, and is a filmmaker and founder of Naz and Matt Foundation. Naz was the co-founder of Aesthetic Clinic, face clinic specializing in non-surgical cosmetic treatments such as Botox and filler. They were very supportive of GPN when it started in the same year, and I enjoyed the company. I introduced them to other members, and following this, Naz had a clinic in the basement of a hairstylist in St. Martin's Lane. Both very successful and young entrepreneurs, living the life and enjoying it. This very sadly ended the day that Naz took his own life on the 30th of July 2014, 2 days after his deeply religious family confronted him about his sexuality. Matt started the Naz and Matt Foundation to empower and support LGBTQI individuals, their friends and family to work towards resolving challenges linked to sexuality or gender identity, particularly when religion is heavily influencing the situation. Matt will talk now about the power of unconditional love and the tragic event that forced him to start Naz and Matt Foundation, a multi-award winning charity that tackles religious and cultural homophobia. He will talk about the challenges experienced by the LGBTQI individual who contact the charity for support and the opportunity we all have to share to change the future. Please give a warm welcome to Matt Mahmood-Ogston.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. That's very nice of you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to meet all of you, and thank you for attending this evening. Some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight, I really do need to say and give you a trigger warning, because some of the topics I might talk about could be quite challenging in your own personal life. So please do be aware that I will be talking about some very difficult subjects. So yes, shall I start? I prepared some kind of visuals to help people imagine, what I'm talking about. Is that okay to share?
Of course, yes, please do.
Thank you. So, fingers crossed. Can you now see a white slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So stop me at any point if it stops or it doesn't work. And there'll be plenty of opportunity at the end to ask me questions. So I am going to go through things and yes, I will stop explaining things and I'll just start. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. My name is Matt, and I'm from a charity called Naz and Matt Foundation. So Naz and Matt Foundation, so who actually were Naz and Matt? So Naz and Matt Foundation was named after Naz, my fiance, that's him on the left, and myself, Matt. We're a registered charity created in 2014. Naz is a doctor and was born into a deeply religious Muslim family. And I was born into a non-practicing Church of England family. Within my family, I had both white British and South Asian members in my own family. Neither of us actually practiced or followed a religion, but we respected all religions. We believe in good karma, doing good things in life, and helping others. And we firmly believe that positive energy attracts positive energy. Soon after we met in 2001, we began to realize that to be ourselves, to live a normal life, we'd have to run away from our hometown of Birmingham to the bright lights and freedom of London, because Naz lived in fear of our relationship being discovered by his deeply religious parents. At all costs, our relationship had to remain hidden, because he feared what would happen if we were found out. In the safety of London, we found freedom and we found our happiness. We could be ourselves and we could be free to be together. And on our 10-year anniversary of the day that we met, in a packed nightclub in front of all of our friends, I did something that I've always wanted to do. I walked Naz into the DJ booth and got down on one knee, and I asked Naz to marry me. And through a beaming smile, Naz said, yes, yes, I will marry you, Matt. And that was the happiest day of my life. And I will never forget that moment, because everything seemed so perfect and everything seemed so right. A few days later, we set sail on the cruise of a lifetime, happy, in love, and looking forward to our future, growing old together. 3 years later, on a trip to Birmingham, Naz was visiting his family for Eid. And at some point during that visit, he was confronted about being gay for the first time by his family. And in floods of tears, Naz did something that he never thought that would be possible. He admitted he was gay, he was in love with me, and he told his mum that we'd been together for 13 years and we were engaged to be married. I only wish his family never responded in the way that they did, because after that declaration of love, he was told to go to a psychiatrist to be cured of being gay, because I'd heard it on radio programs, they'd heard gay people being cured on the radio. They treated Naz like a disease that needed to be got rid of. The very part of himself that Naz treasured the most, his identity, they said it had to be removed in order for him to be accepted. And 2 days after that confrontation, on the 30th of July 2014, I received a phone call at work ordering me to go home immediately, but I wasn't told why. My heart pounded as I ran up the hill where I lived with Naz. And as I raced around the corner into our street, I saw police, crowds gathered outside, blue lights flashing everywhere, police tape blocking off the road, and members of the public taking photos. As I tried to get into our home, I was stopped by the police and bundled into the back of the police car. And as I glanced across the pavement, that's when I saw a red blanket on the floor. And that's when I began to realize that my darling Naz, my soulmate, my reason for living, was no longer here. That was the day that both of us died. Our future together had been taken away from us forever. Emotionally out of control, I went missing for 2 days to run away from the truth. Police and family searched for me. And when I returned, all I wanted to do was follow my darling Naz, to join him, to end my life in exactly the same way that he did. Less than 24 hours after Naz had passed away, I had to speak to his mom for the first time in over 10 years. Both of our hearts had been broken. A man that we both loved had been taken away from us. And then she uttered the words, "You know Naz was living in sin because of his religion, and you were living in sin because of yours." They buried my darling Naz deliberately without me being there, and I was unable to say goodbye to the man that I loved, my soulmate. I was left to organise a memorial a couple of weeks later without him being present. I was emotionally blackmailed and made to promise to his family that I would not tell anyone that Naz liked men, as it would bring shame upon their family. And out of respect, I followed their wishes until it reached a point and I decided I could not sit back and let this happen to anyone else ever, ever again. The Naz and Matt Foundation, our charity, was founded on this mission statement, and it guides us in everything that we do. And our mission is to never let religion, any religion, come in between the unconditional love of parents and their children. We are pro-belief, pro-religion. We support individuals from any faith or culture, including those who have left the religion they were born into. And nothing I say today is anti-religion. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're pro-religion where it exists to empower individuals, make us better human beings, and make us a stronger and more accepting society. Our main job with the charity is to open closed hearts and minds, and to remove the barriers that prevent parents accepting their own children by helping them understand that the barriers in front of them exist only in their own mind. And these barriers can be dismantled. And in doing so, they can save the life of their LGBTQI+ child. But we can only do this work by not hiding in the shadows. We tackle the beliefs that allow parents to think that being gay is a disease and can be cured. And still to this day, conversion therapy or gay queer therapy, it's still completely legal in the UK. We're getting close, but still the government hasn't banned it. A few years ago, we took on the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd, you can see her on the left, pleading with her to criminalise gay queer therapy by telling her about the impact of not doing so. Her crossed arms was really she was a nice person to speak to, but the crossed arms really show you the response that we got. And still a few years later, we still haven't got the banned conversion therapy. We've taken our story to the House of Lords to try and convince them to understand the impact of allowing these types of abuse to continue. And outside of the pandemic, we've travelled across the UK, sharing our story at secondary schools, colleges, and universities. We talk about the impact of homophobic bullying and what we can all do to understand and challenge it. And we try and do this through storytelling, starting off with children. And this is an image of our first children's book called Salim Secret, which tells the story of a young boy who feels he's different. And he tells his best friend, and he loses his best friend because his best friend doesn't want to be friends anymore. And this young boy goes on a journey to find acceptance from the parents who gave birth to him. And some primary schools have now bought this to go into their libraries. We share our story in public on platforms where we can engage with individuals who can help and action the changes that we need to make in this world. We share our story with parents, with law enforcement agencies, support agencies, and even with central government departments, hoping to bring the change to create the world that Naz wanted to live in. And because of sharing our story, a couple of years ago, it helped inspire a groundbreaking storyline in one of the UK's oldest running soaps, Coronation Street. The story of a young Muslim female falling in love with another female on the street. A part of that story was based on, sadly, what happened to my Naz. And what was so important about that storyline was that we were able to interrupt millions of households all around the UK when families were watching TV, not expecting to be taken into this journey of understanding that different people can fall in love with different people. And this is important because that storyline, going into those households, it made more people aware of our charity. And because more people came aware of our charity, people had never heard about us before, could reach out to us for support. And shortly after that storyline, the number of individuals who identified as female, who are attracted to females, they increased in the number of people who come to our charity for that type of support. And the actress who led that storyline, Bhavna Limbachia, she's now one of our proud patrons and uses her platform as an ally to help make a positive difference. And because we shared our story, the love story of Naz and Matt has been turned into a chart-topping song written and performed by the award-winning folk band, The Young Uns. And that song went on to an album that was listed as the best folk album of the year by the BBC Folk Awards. And that song, Be the Man, the love story of Naz and Matt, the very first time it was performed in public was at Glastonbury, a place that my Naz, my darling Naz, had always wanted to take me. But sadly, we ran out of time before we could go. But somehow, the spirit of Naz did make it to Glastonbury when that song was sung. One of the things we do now is to amplify the voices who can help us inspire the changes that we want to see. And this is the cover of our first new documentary called My God, I'm Queer, which is free to watch on Channel 4 On Demand, which tells, it talks a little bit about our story and some of the clients that our charity supports. But I think what's really important about the film is it goes into a more positive place, showing acceptance and families. So I'm talking about acceptance from the individuals in the film who've been accepted by their family for being queer. In all of this, the individuals that can make this problem go away overnight are not the religious leaders, it's the parents. The parents are the solution. Because if they love and accept their children for how they are, for who they were born to be, this problem would go away. And so every year on the 30th of July, the day that my darling Naz sadly passed away, we wanted to reclaim that dark day as something that was positive. And so we celebrate an annual event called Out and Proud Parents Day, where we celebrate proud parents who have accepted their LGBTQ+ children. And on that day, we encourage them to come out to their family, to come out to the public, to come out to their community, to say how proud they are of the children they've given birth to, hoping that they will inspire other parents who may be struggling to understand and accept their own kids. And to help support these parents, later this year, we're going to be launching our first book for parents, for religious parents of LGBTQ+ children. We're hoping to give them enough information to help them learn how to embrace the child they're given birth to and accept them as the person they were born to be. We're all part of the same big family. And if you know LGBTQ+, or if you know people who aren't LGBTQ+, we need their support. Because they, as allies have a very important job to do to amplify the voices that will lead to greater acceptance, to support the parents who are struggling to understand what it means to be LGBTQ+. Without their voices, we may never find that acceptance that Naz longed for. Now, you know, after tonight's session, I know you won't, but you know, if you forget about everything that I've said, if you forget about Naz, if you forget all of the things that I've talked about, and if you forget about, sadly, what happened to Naz, tragically, then if we all go away from this and take no action, then sadly more young people like Naz will take their own life. Or collectively, we could spend a few hours each month working together or speaking to people that you know, helping us all to solve this problem. Because I can't sit back and let this happen to anyone else ever again. The question is, can you? Thank you all for listening, and thank you for your time this evening. Thank you, and sorry for the deep breaths. It's always very difficult to share our story. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. It's always very difficult. So thank you for bearing with me while I take deep breaths. But
indeed, yes. Sorry, I have to as well. So thank you very much for a very, very, very moving expose there, really, and thank you for sharing all of these fears and acceptance. And I didn't know about the Coronation Street bits. Actually, sorry, I don't actually watch that much television, but it's really, congratulations. It's actually amazing, because of course it's through this media that we can educate more and more people. It's true. Anyway, shall we open the floor to questions now?
absolutely.
Yes. Is anyone would like to ask a question now to Matt? Or a comment?
Well,
Matt, have you had any contact with Naz's parents since Naz's suicide? And do they still hold the same view they held at that time?
It's a good question. Thank you, Ian. So the short answer is certainly for the the first year I had to. I had obligations, and that meant I had to. But the thing is, I've reached a point where I can't any longer think about what they think or what they feel. Have they moved on? Have they become more accepting? Because that would just eat me up. And the reason why I still share our story, and I try and avoid too much detail without highlighting people too much, because now our story is no longer our story. It's a representation of the hundreds of people that come to us for support. So although I do talk about, Naz's parents or his family in the examples I give, in many ways they are a reflection and a mirror image of the many families we hear about through our work. It's and I think to kind of answer in one way, one of the things that's been incredibly difficult to kind of handle is really my mental health over the last several years, because this work is challenging, and for a long time I did have to speak to the family, and it was catastrophic to my own well-being to have to do so. So I'm just glad I don't have to legally anymore.
Is your family accepting of you?
Yes, I'm very fortunate that my family are accepting of me, and I'm also very fortunate that soon after meeting Naz, I'd never had a partner before. I'd recently only came out myself a few months before meeting Naz, but soon after meeting Naz, I was so excited and so in love with being with Naz that I just wanted to take him everywhere, and I didn't think about what other people would think. And I remember one beautiful moment that happened was that I only found my nan. I only found out about my nan sadly after she passed away, but just within a few months of meeting Naz, I took Naz to visit my nan for supper and a cup of tea, and I'd never taken a friend to see my nan before. And my nan and Naz, as he was studying to be a doctor at the time, they really got on with each other. And as soon as we left, and I never found this out until years after she sadly passed away, but I found out that what my nan did as soon as we left, she picked up the phone and she called all of the relatives on her side of the family. And she says, I want to tell you something about Matt, because when it's time for him to say it to you, I don't want this to be a problem. So she went around her side of the family and essentially told everyone that Naz was my partner, and not to be surprised when and if I eventually came out to them. So I'm fortunate that I only came out when I was 34, and before that, many of my family members had already known Naz for over 10 years and just accepted him as someone that Matt was always with, and I never really questioned it.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Jean-Francois, I don't know whether other people have had the problem. I suddenly lost the picture, and I had a label about Zoom United or something. And all you have to do is to go back to your link and press on your link if that happens.
Okay, well, thank you for mentioning it. I mean, I didn't see that here. Aaron has a question now. Would you like to ask it now, Aaron?
Yeah, it's not. Hi, it's not really a question as such. I just wanted to mention that I'm so sorry for what you've had to go through, and the purpose of the charity. Seriously, from the slides that you've just shared, it just goes to show you how important and how fundamental it is to be getting that message out there. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I mean, it's my face that people see quite often when the charity talks or does things. But what's really important for us is to use this platform that we now have grown over the last kind of 6+ years, and really use our platform to amplify other people's voices, to make sure that their voices are also heard, and to make sure that their stories always count and can matter, because some individuals will connect to our story and some people won't. And so the more people that we have sharing their stories, whether they're good or bad, or positive or negative, or accepting or not, what's really important is these stories are shared. And I think also just to say that some of the activities that we do it because we believe it's the right thing to do, and quite often we don't know what the impact or how it's going to be received or where it's going to get found out. But I just want to give one very quick example, if I might, before I was going to Trevor, is that we had an email just last Friday from a relative of somebody who had a cousin, and she didn't like the cousin. He was very, he was just like, she just didn't like him for many reasons, and it was very much of a internalized homophobia, even though she didn't know he was gay. And she went to the house. He'd been kicked out of his family home, and he was staying with her relatives. And he was playing this song over and over and over again in his room. And she went into this room to see why he was playing this song, which just happened to be the Man. And she went into his room, and he was in tears, and she sat down next to him, and he came out to her over that song. So we never know what happens to the things that we do, but sometimes people do get in contact with us to say how it's impacted people. So I just want to say it's really important for all of us to share our stories in whatever platform we can. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Trevor, did you want to ask your question now?
Well, yeah, not so much of a question really. I mean, firstly, just to say, like everybody, you know, sharing in thanks for what the work that you're doing and the story that you've told. I mean, I appreciate some of it. I came from a faith-based background as well. Thankfully, nothing quite as bad as that happened to me. But I did get married to a woman, and I had 2 children. It worked out in the end, but you know, I'm long since divorced and out, and I have a partner of 6 years. But and I'm very accepted by my family. But huge amount of, you know, blood, sweat, and tears have happened to get to that place. So, like you, I think I've taken some of those lessons and tried to do my own bit of work. I've recently, for example, moved into the West End, and I'm right by All Souls Church, next door to the BBC, and I walked past the other week, and there was a lot of activity, and I bumped into sort of one guy and sort of said, oh, you know, sort of chatting to him, and he said he was the youth pastor for the church. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's see where we can go with that, you know. So I sort of got talking to him and said to him, look, I'm really interested in your position, because you're in a pastoral care position. What would you do if you know, a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy in your care came to you and said that he was gay, or a girl that was lesbian, or whatever, somebody was bisexual or trans? And he, you know, very quickly launched into a very evangelical position, you know, and said that he would have to tell them that, you know, God couldn't approve of this and all the rest of it. And I kind of stopped him and I said, look, his name's Trevor, actually, which is strange. And I said to him, look, I've got a lot of experience of this, and I want to spend time with you because I'm worried that you're in a position which has a duty of care which you won't be able to discharge because of your beliefs, you know. And thankfully, I talked him into going for a walk with me, and we had a walk around Regent's Park, and I let him kind of get it all off his chest. I knew I wasn't going to, you know, turn an evangelical in a walk around Regent's Park, but it's a start. So, you know, we've got a sort of civil relationship going on. We're talking about it, and I'm trying to explain to him the real harm that he could cause. And I've sent him the video Prayers for Bobby. I'm sure you've seen that one, which is about an evangelical Christian American family where indeed the son commits suicide because of the mother's beliefs. So I emailed him the other day, and we're meant to be reconvening. I said to him, I want him to watch that video before we meet again. But I think there are lots of opportunities like that where you bump into people who you can have dialogue with, and it has to be slow and gradual and gentle, and, you know, but it is rewarding.
I completely agree. I mean, thank you for doing that, Trevor, because it is hard. It is hard work, but you're right there. Quite often what's necessary is a passage of time with slow bits of information being drip fed into the narrative or the conversation or to the experience. So it can take time, but it absolutely can be done.
Well, I mean, I saw that just for my own family, and they were obviously far, you know, they weren't evangelical, was it? You know, it's a Jewish family, but we grew up in a fairly progressive environment. But my dad was pretty homophobic. But I realised that it took time, and it also, you can use things like film. It's very useful. Plays, anything that really dramatises the emotion behind it. I think is important. You know.
It's a good point, because I think, you know, what's also important is that, you know, whatever media type, you know, you can work with, you know, get something out, share something, find something and give it to someone else. Because you're right, because poetry, films, music, you know, spoken word, activities, events, interviews, panel events. So, you know, each of those different media types or platforms, some people might commit to them and some people might not. So the more that we can spread them out.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed, Trevor, for sharing these. There's Rakesh would like to ask a question there.
Hi, Matt. Sorry, I'm going to be off camera, but thank you for sharing your heartfelt story, and really sorry for your loss. I'm obviously a South Asian background, but I'm not a Muslim background. I can share, or you know, some of the cultural sensitivities around the subject. I think things are hopefully improving and getting better with, you know, information and education. My question is, to what extent is your foundation working with religious organizations and faith leaders of the various religions, or you know, the major religions in this country, and sort of what's the reaction, and do you see a distinction you know, between the various faith groups, you know, when tackling this issue of LGBTQ and, you know, gay rights, etc.?
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you for your question. So first of all, I mean, our charity works across, you know, religions and cultures. So we get individuals from a variety of backgrounds contact us, and I'd say that what's really important for people to understand is that although over 95% of the individuals who come to our charity are from one specific religion, they come to our charity because they know they're going to be understood. And what we see is, regardless of the religion, if it's a conservative interpretation within the household, then quite often the actions and the impact is very similar. It's not the same, and the reasons are sometimes quite different, but many of the actions and the impacts are actually quite similar, particularly when it comes to supporting somebody and some of the things that we have to deal with. In answer to your question about, are we working with different faith organisations? So yes, we have some connections to different faith organisations, but one thing, and one of our patrons is actually he's a vicar, but when, as a very small charity, I'm saying we are a very, very small charity, we have to make certain decisions with the work that we do to enable us to be focused and put enough energy into that focus. So the first thing that we have to do is provide support to the individuals that are affected and need sometimes emergency support. Sometimes I need emergency housing. Sometimes I need a safe place to talk each week. Sometimes I need someone to share information with. Sometimes they need to contact us, and we have to then you know, coordinate with the police, for example. So support is the most critical thing that we do. But then over the long term and strategy wise, we have to make a decision based on how small our charity is. We can either work with and focus with religious leaders, or we can work with the parents. Now, if we chose to work and focus with religious leaders, the challenges are with that is, if we manage to persuade a religious leader in a community to be accepting of LGBT people, then sadly, if that religious leader is accepting, but the family of the LGBT person is not, then the problem still exists. However, if you work with the parents and you can create a safe, accepting environment within the family household, regardless of what their religious leader or community leader is saying, then we can create that safe environment for that person. So in an ideal world, we'll be tackling all three of those channels, all those strategies at the same time. But we tend to focus on the parents because it's the parents can actually are more able to bring the solution and the positive outcomes within the family household. In an ideal world, yes, we would be working with more religious leaders. And we do have strong connections with an organisation that's as part of the synod on the Christian evangelical side. But in terms of other religions, we know we've got so much work to do. This is a lifetime of work. And, you know, if you know individuals who want to volunteer time to help us in those areas, then we would absolutely, you know, love to speak to them. But as a small charity, it's often we have to make some difficult decisions in what we do.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you.
How do you recruit volunteers really for that?
Often it's through people seeing the work and then getting in contact to say they would like to volunteer. I mean, our volunteers, you know, as a small charity, it's difficult sometimes to manage everything that's going on because I'm a volunteer. We don't have any paid staff. So the projects the volunteers that we typically like to work with are projects who have a particular skill, have a particular desire or particular energy that they want to put in place on a project. So we typically work on a project basis. So, you know, we might, like Out and Proud Parents Day, you know, we typically have, you know, volunteers just for Out and Proud Parents Day. For Pride, you know, last year we had, well, not last year, but last year we did Pride in London, we had like 71 volunteers, not including myself there. So really we are always looking for volunteers, but especially volunteers who have a skill and a desire to actually see something through from the start to the finish, work with us and use our platform to help.
Excellent. I see two raised hands there. I think really David has already unmuted himself. David, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. First of all, I'd just like to convey my sadness that you know, families, no matter who or what they are, can you know, drive the agenda to make, and regretfully, somebody to you know, take their own life that are very vulnerable. Now, my question is about, it's continuing on from the theme on religion, because in my own religion and in Muslim religions, unfortunately, we've got things as honor killings, and I'm aware of these things happening, and I just, you know, I just find them so reprehensible. I'm going to ask you as to whether that's included in your agenda with the organizations that you deal with.
Thank you, David. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the religious homophobia or religious and cultural homophobia, from a kind of a theoretical standpoint, it falls within honor-based abuse. So we work very closely with a charity called Karma Nirvana, who've been working.
So which one? Sorry.
Karma Nirvana.
Right.
They're not an LGBT charity, but they've been working to protect individuals from forced marriage and honor-based abuse for the last 25 years, because the areas that we focus on are religious and cultural homophobia, conversion therapy, the kind of the campaign to ban conversion therapy, LGBT honor-based abuse, and also LGBT forced marriage as well. Those are the key areas that we work in, because it's in many ways they're all interconnected with each other, because it's this idea that within a family that they don't want to have shame brought onto their family by having a child that's different to everyone else in their family.
Yeah,
it's a very complex topic, and I can't really do it justice to explain it here now, but it's a very complex topic, but it's so important to understand the psychological profile of family members, in particular the parents within all of those experiences, because it's only through doing that we can start to unpick that behavior and either try and change it, or if we can't change it, to actually spot the warning signs so we can actually take appropriate action to protect the individual who we've become aware of.
Yeah, all the more credit for you to bring it to public attention and to be able to deal with it. I mean, you know, it takes a lot of courage, and I wish you all the very best to continue in the future.
Thank you very much. I mean, I never see any of this as a choice, and I don't mean to sound, well, I don't know how that sounds, but I never had a choice because, you know, I was put into a corner for months where, you know, I was emotionally blackmailed by the family not to tell anyone that Naz liked men because they didn't want the shame brought on their family. And I had press chasing me down the road. Well, not sorry, chasing the neighbours down the road. I had press ringing my doorbell, sending me emails, calling me on the phone. It got so bad that I had to get the local MP and the local vicar to step in to call.
Who was your local MP?
Tulip Siddiqui.
Right, with you.
She's brilliant.
Hampstead, yeah.
So none of this was meant to be public, but then what happened, it was the public inquest, and I didn't even know what a public inquest was, but then I discovered that a public inquest is a court of, not a court of law, it's a court of fact. And so I could either continue with that secret and for Naz to be remembered as a person who perhaps for unknown reasons took his own life, or I could share our story knowing full well that, you know, his parents would find out, knowing that the public would find out, and our lives were very private, and certainly the press would find out. So really it all kind of came about because I was backed into a corner and that's all I could do was to tell the truth. And then when individuals started to contact us for help, I mean, how can you say no to somebody when they ask you for help and you know that you can help them?
Yeah. My gosh, yeah. So you've been through a hell of a lot.
I have, but now it's all focused on the individuals we can help support because they're the ones going through it right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. There is another free question there really being asked there. Stephen, shall we go to Stephen now?
Hi. My questions are basically about for yourself really, because I knew someone who committed suicide and it's not a pleasant thing to go through. And I sometimes wonder that they seem to be on a track and they can't seem to get off that track, and the end of the line is that they do what they do. And I think it's very sad that, you know, people don't ask for help and get off that track. And you said that you went missing for 2 days. So my question to you is, what support did you get in dealing with Naz's suicide?
Thank you, Stephen, for the question. I mean, first of all, I'm very thankful to have my family, you know, friends. They stayed for I mean, it was quite literally for months in the flat, always with me. I was never allowed to be on my own for very long. I've been through, first of all, I went to see a psychotherapist. I saw that psychotherapist for like 4 weeks, but I left after 4 weeks because she didn't know what drag queen was. So I left after that, and I did counselling for 13 weeks. And I don't, to be honest, I don't mind talking about this because I think it's really important for people to talk openly about how they're supporting their mental health. I've been seeing a therapist ever since because there's still things that I have to reconcile and try and resolve. But there's one detail which I didn't really share in my talk, and really this is the key thing that's kept me from following Naz, was the fact that when I came back from going missing for those 2 days, the only thing on my mind was to follow Naz, and I waited in the flat until there was a gap. I don't really want to talk about the details of it, but a gap had appeared where my friends and family had gone in the kitchen to get some food or something, and I'd waited for hours for that gap to appear. And in that moment, I got myself up to take my own life. And at the moment I was about to go through with it, I heard Naz's voice, and it wasn't that voice that we have all in our head. I think everyone has that voice in their head, but it was this loud bellowing voice, and it was Naz's words, and it was his voice. And he said, "Matt, darling, I want you to do something for me, and because you always did everything I asked of you, I want you to do this thing I ask of you, and I want you to stay, and I want you to set up a group so other people don't have to go through the same thing that we went through." And instead of continuing on that path, I went back in the flat and I locked the door and I just started crying. And that event of hearing Naz's voice in that moment, that was the thing that kept me here, because I didn't want to betray what he asked me to do. So it was, and many times I got close to that tipping point again, but I always had to keep reminding myself of the words, and it wouldn't be good if you know, I think I'm quite a spiritual person. It wouldn't be good if I ended this journey and had to come back and do it all over again, because that was too hard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Shall we ask Aaron would like to ask a question now?
Hi there, sorry, I know I've already asked a question. I'm asking another one. It's just with regards to education. You know, us as humans, we don't know unless, you know, if we went through something ourselves. You know, I've been very, very lucky to have amazing parents that it hasn't, you know, been any issues at all. And I've got a beautiful daughter who will grow up not, you know, experiencing anything like you've discussed this evening. It would be good to find out, with regards to education, what sort of platforms, etc., do you use to sort of get that message out so people are aware that, you know, this is a real issue out there. Yeah, so what type of platforms do you use?
Thank you for the question. So you know, in questions like this, I feel like I should have this really kind of clear, concise, strategic, tactical response to a question like that. But you know, I'm not from a charity background, or an education background. But through schools coming forward to contact us and request the school talks, that's why we do the school talk. So typically a school, so our priority is with schools that are based within an area that has a strong or a high concentration of families from conservative or religious or culturally conservative backgrounds. So those schools contact us. Outside of the pandemic, we would go in and we would deliver a talk that centers around our story, but you know, told for the age group, secondary school students, and then we would kind of align it closer to bullying and perhaps bullying within their family or friends. We have, for primary schools, we have the Salim Secret book, which some of the primary schools are now using. And what's been really interesting since My God, I'm Queer came out, the documentary, we're now starting to see requests from secondary schools and universities who would like permission to show it within their classrooms. And just recently we had an RE teacher, she's produced a question and answer sheet for the film, so that can be given to any other school that wants to show the film. But moving forwards, you know, we have now a couple more people who are willing to share their story using our platform, who come from the same religious background as Naz, and they're going to share their stories to talk about their experiences. So it's, in an ideal world, we'd have funding. In an ideal world, we would have this UK-wide plan to actually drop materials in many schools and actually teach them, coach them, mentor them in this type of subject material. But we're not quite there just yet. But I think we are making a reasonable impact based on those, the resources that we have. So if anyone here has an education background and wants to help in that area, please do.
Do you have sorry, I was just about to say, do you have like a Facebook or Instagram and stuff like that, so we can maybe possibly like follow the charity on there? Or
yeah, please do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, website. Just search as a Matt Foundation. We're not on TikTok or yeah, we're one of the more mature ones, the older social networks.
Or Bebop, yes. Excellent. The next question is from Ian.
One thing which I become interested in, because I do quite a lot of work in the in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that of course obviously includes LGBT. And I'd not really been aware of trans people, and then I suddenly discovered that trans people had suffered huge problems, and there's been a lot of publicity, at least on things like Stonewall's website and so forth, about the problems that trans people have. And I just wondered if trans people has become quite a significant issue for the Nas and Matt Foundation to address. And could you also, you might have already told us this, but I hadn't taken it in. Can you tell us how we join your foundation, please?
Yes, of course. So thank you, Ian. So we support all LGBTQI individuals. We support lesbian, gays, trans individuals who identify as queer, non-binary, intersex. But the majority of the individuals who use our service, they identify as gay or lesbian. So that's the majority of the individuals who come to us for support. And we believe that because, we believe that's the case because many of the people who come to our charity for support are coming because they can identify with Naz's story and they know they're going to be understood when we respond and when we start working with them. So it's an area we would like to be doing more to support our trans siblings. And it's so important right now that we all stand together with the ban for conversion therapy, that it supports and protects trans individuals as well as homosexual individuals as well. So that's really important. In terms of how do you join our foundation? Can I ask a question to the floor then? So we have a support group in London, which, well, outside the pandemic, we have a support group outside London. It's open to anyone who's from a conservative, religious or cultural background, because we need to make sure that the conversation is relatively focused for those that attend. But what would, if you wanted to join a charity like ours, what do you see within that membership? What do you see taking place? Because we're at this time where we're starting to grow and we're starting to be able to look at these things. But how would you, if you joined a charity like ours, what would you expect in return, or what would you like to see from us, or would you like to be paying for that membership? How would you like to see it work?
Well, incidentally, I didn't realize that it had a religious connotation. I'm actually irreligious. I can't think of the word I want now, but I'm an atheist. I mean, if I join the Matt and Nas Foundation, I would just hope that if it required subscriptions, if it required people to talk, I give talks on my experience as my story as a bisexual, and that's quite important actually, because bisexuals can suffer a lot of backlash.
Exactly, you're right, absolutely right. Within religious families, yes. So, I mean, thank you. So we will look into the membership. It's just something we haven't prioritized. But yes, our charity is specifically focused for supporting individuals from religious and culturally conservative backgrounds. In fact, to be honest, those are the individuals we work with only, because we have to remain very focused in our work. Otherwise, we won't achieve what we need to. Thank you, Ian.
That's excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I think we just leave that now really and say thank you to you, really, Matt, really, for sharing this very moving sort of story, and also really this amazing really question and answer that ensued afterward, really. This, with regard to funding and so on, I mean, I suppose there probably will be actually some other things. I'll speak to you actually about really some other funding that could be available really from various organizations, including governmental organizations, particularly in the remit of education. Because I believe that education is certainly the one that actually is the key to all evil, literally. And that is certainly one of the biggest evil that there is actually at the moment, really, this intolerance and religious intolerance really throughout the world. So if we can be any help really onto that, really, we certainly would be able to and willing to do so. I'm sure that everybody would be sharing that with me. I'm going to end the recording now.